The alarm clock sounded relentlessly at 5 in the morning, wrenching Freddie from the serenity of his sleep. With a resigned sigh, he rubbed his eyes and sat up in bed, reaching out to turn off the buzzing alarm beside his head. The room was immersed in the twilight of dawn, with just a sliver of light seeping through the closed curtains. He rose, his body still heavy with fatigue, and quickly dressed, opting for a faded t-shirt and jeans that had seen better days. As he prepared, his gaze drifted to Caroline, who was sleeping peacefully under the covers. The sight of her, with her hair spread across the pillow and her breathing gentle, brought a brief smile to his tired face. Despite the exhausting routine and the financial difficulties they faced, moments like this renewed his love for her. With soft steps, Freddie approached the bed and crouched beside her. "Carol, love," he whispered, lightly touching her shoulder. She murmured something unintelligible in response, turning slightly towards him. "I'm heading to work. Can you do something for me today?" Caroline opened one eye, blinking against the soft light beginning to invade the room. Sure, what do you need? Could you place a bet on the lottery for me?" "Use those numbers I always try," Freddie said, his tone mixing hope and weariness. "You know, 09, 17, 23, 28, 36, and the 12. She rubbed her eyes, sitting up in bed. "All right, Freddie. I'll do it after I wake up. Maybe today is our lucky day, right?" He smiled, leaning in to kiss her gently. "Maybe it is. I love you, Carol. Take care today." "I love you too," she replied, still half asleep. Freddie stood up and grabbed his worn backpack, slinging it over his shoulder. He gave Caroline one last look before leaving the room. In the kitchen, he prepared a quick coffee and gulped it down, feeling the warmth of the liquid wake him up a bit more. He grabbed the keys to the truck and left the house, the cool morning breeze caressing his face as he headed to where his small truck was parked. The vehicle, old and with peeling paint, served both as his means of work and a constant reminder of all he still needed to achieve. As soon as Freddie left, the silence of the room was broken by the insistent vibrating of Caroline's phone. With a heavy sigh, she stretched to pick up the device, frowning as she saw the name Hendricks flashing on the screen. She quickly opened the message, her eyes scanning the words promising another clandestine meeting. "I'm waiting for you. Can't wait to see you, darling," read the message. Caroline typed a response with hesitant fingers, guilt mingling with anticipation. "I'll be there soon. Just need to do one thing first." Turning off the phone, she let herself fall back onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. The bet, she thought, would just be a small detour on the way to meeting Hendricks. A detour that, unbeknownst to her, was about to change their lives forever. As she prepared to leave, Caroline couldn't help but think about the numbers Freddie had asked her to play. If only those numbers could bring the luck he so hoped for, maybe, just maybe, things could start to change. With that thought, she finally got up and began to get ready for the day ahead, unaware that fate was already in motion. Caroline left the house with her bag slung over her shoulder, feeling a wave of ambivalent emotions pulsing through her chest. At the corner, the kiosk where they usually bought lottery tickets seemed bathed in the morning light now generously spreading across the city. As she approached, she spotted Mr. Gomez, the owner, who already recognized her by name. "Good morning, Caroline." "The usual?" he asked with a warm smile, while organizing some magazines. Caroline forced a smile in response. "Not today, Mr. Gomez. I'd like a special bet. Different numbers this time." She handed him a piece of paper where the numbers were scribbled in block letters: 09, 17, 23, 28, 36, and 12. "Ah, changing your luck, are you?" he commented as he typed the numbers into the machine. "Do these numbers hold any special meaning?" "Yes, they are important dates," she responded vaguely, avoiding going into details about the sentimental origin Freddie attributed to them. "Well, may they bring you good luck then," exclaimed Mr. Gomez, handing her the receipt after receiving the payment. Caroline took the paper, carefully folding it before sliding it into her bag. "Thank you. Hopefully," she murmured, feeling the weight of those words. As she left the kiosk, a gust of fresh air made her take a deeper breath, trying to dispel the growing anxiety about the upcoming encounter. Walking toward the gym, her phone vibrated again. It was another message from Hendricks, heightening her unease. "I'm counting the minutes to see you. Are you almost here?" She stopped, briefly leaning against a nearby wall, and typed a quick response. "I'm on my way. Did what you know. Just a little bit left now." The streets were beginning to fill with people, and the morning buzz grew as people started their daily activities. Caroline felt torn between the excitement of what was to come and the guilt of the secret she kept not only from Freddie but now, from herself. She knew little about Hendricks beyond the moments they shared together. His life beyond these encounters was a mystery. He vaguely mentioned work and friends but never spoke of family. And she never asked. Upon arriving at the gym, a modern building with large mirrored windows, Caroline spotted Hendricks already waiting. He was leaning casually against one of the building's columns, dressed in workout clothes that outlined his defined muscles, a stark contrast to the tired and worn-out Freddie she had left at home. Hendricks smiled when he saw her, a smile that always made her forget her hesitations. "You look beautiful," he said, approaching for a tight hug and a kiss that Caroline fervently returned. "And you always so charming," she replied, allowing herself to be swept up in the moment, the bag with the winning ticket hanging by her side, momentarily forgotten. "And then, ready for our workout?" Hendricks asked, holding her hand and leading her inside the gym. "Always," said Caroline, following him as a mix of adrenaline and guilt began to form in her stomach. As they walked side by side, the reality of her double life weighed on her, but the attraction to Hendricks pulled her further away from what should have been her normal routine. Deep down, Caroline was completely unaware of Hendricks's family existence, a truth that remained hidden, just like many details of his life that she was yet to discover. Her thoughts scattered between risk and excitement as she prepared for the hours ahead, not knowing that the choices made that day would resonate throughout her life. Inside the gym, the pulsating sound of electronic music filled the air, blending with the noises of equipment and instructors motivating their students. Caroline and Hendricks began their workout together, alternating between cardio machines and weight training areas. As they ran side by side on the treadmills, Hendricks cast complicit glances her way, heightening the intensity of the moment. "Feeling good today?" Hendricks asked, increasing the speed on his treadmill. Caroline, breathless, smiled. "Better now that I'm here with you. It takes me away from my mundane routine," she confessed, feeling each step as a small escape. "And about what we talked about earlier, did you really do it?" Hendricks inquired, his tone low, mixed with curiosity. "Yes, I placed the bet. The numbers Freddie chose," she said, almost in a whisper, aware that her words carried more than just lottery digits. Hendricks looked at her with a serious expression. "You know, Caroline, sometimes I think about what we're doing. Don't you feel trapped?" She slowed her pace, facing him. "Of course I do. But when I'm with you, those worries disappear." Their workout continued with a series of strength exercises, where they helped each other by adjusting weights and holding equipment. The physical proximity intensified their emotional connection, and each smile and touch seemed to further seal their illicit bond. After several hours, exhausted but satisfied, they finally headed for the locker room. On the way, Hendricks held Caroline's hand, stopping her for a moment. "Caroline, I don't want this to end. You mean more to me than just these meetings." Caroline felt a tightness in her heart. "I don't want it to end either, Hendricks. But we have our lives, and—" "What if we changed that?" he interrupted, the intensity of his gaze making it clear that his words were not mere speculation. She hesitated, weighing the implications. I need to think. It's not simple. They said goodbye with a tight hug and a prolonged kiss, unspoken promises hanging between them like the heavy air of uncertainty. Caroline then picked up her bag, feeling the weight of the lottery ticket inside, a reminder of the double game she was playing. Returning home, the path seemed longer than usual. Each step was accompanied by a growing anxiety about how she would keep her two lives separate and intact. As she opened the door to her home, the familiarity of her surroundings enveloped her like a cloak, one she wore with resignation. She found Freddie in the kitchen, preparing something to eat. He looked up at her with a tired smile. "Hi, love. How was your day?" Caroline forced a smile and approached him, giving him a light kiss on the lips. "It was long, but I'm happy to be home. I've made something for us to eat. Nothing special, but I hope you like it," Freddie said, a gesture that unexpectedly touched Caroline, reminding her of what was at risk. She nodded, helping him finish setting the table. They dined in comfortable silence, both lost in their thoughts. Caroline struggled to keep the conversation light, but Hendrix's words echoed in her mind, confusing her feelings and loyalties. After dinner, while Freddie settled on the couch to rest after a long day, Caroline went upstairs to the bedroom, promising herself that she would take a shower and try to organize her thoughts. The image of Freddie, so loyal and unassuming, contrasted sharply with the passion and danger Hendrix represented. As the hot water ran over her in the shower, Caroline felt tears mix with the water, the reality of her actions beginning to weigh more heavily than she had ever imagined. She would wipe away her tears, dry her body, and return to her role as a wife, as night fell over the city, bringing with it promises of secrets kept in the darkness. And so, the double routine continued. By day, the dedicated wife. By night, the unfaithful lover. Chapter 4. Unexpected Revelation. The days that followed were a blur for Caroline, each marked by escalating tension and a fluctuation between her roles as wife and lover. As Freddie left for work each morning, Caroline counted the hours until she could meet with Hendrix, each encounter intensifying the danger of their secret. One warm afternoon, Caroline and Hendrix took refuge in a small, discreet cafe that had become their secret sanctuary. The tables around them were occupied by other people absorbed in their own lives, providing them with a veil of privacy. Between sips of coffee and whispered conversations, Caroline's phone vibrated intensely against the cold marble table. She looked at the display and saw Freddie flashing urgently. Her heart skipped a beat, mixing anticipation with fear. "Sorry, I need to take this." "It's Freddie," she said, her fingers trembling slightly as she slid to answer the call. "Hendrix, I'll go outside," she murmured, quickly standing up and walking to the sidewalk in front of the cafe. "Caroline, my love, you won't believe it." Freddie's voice was a torrent of excitement and incredulity over the phone. She moved a bit further away, her voice low. "What happened, Freddie?" "We won, Carol. We won the lottery. The numbers were drawn, all of them," he exclaimed, almost breathless. Caroline's world seemed to spin for a moment. "We won." Her voice was a mix of shock and a glimpse of joy she hadn't expected to feel. Yes. The numbers, you bet. Remember, I checked 3 times. It's all there. We are millionaires, Carol." Freddie continued, his voice laden with dreams and plans. Caroline leaned against the cold wall of the building, her mind spinning with the implications. This is incredible, Freddie. I don't know what to say." "I know, I'm in shock too. Listen, let's celebrate tonight. I'll book a table at our favorite restaurant. We can plan everything, decide what to do with the money. I love you so much, Carol. Today is the first day of the rest of our lives." "I love you too, Freddie. I'll see you at home," she responded, the complexity of her emotions making it hard to keep her voice steady. Hanging up the phone, Caroline remained motionless for a long moment, the weight of the news and its implications falling on her like an avalanche. With a heavy sigh, she returned inside the cafe, finding Hendricks watching her with a look of concern. "Is everything all right?" he asked, noticing the paleness of her face. She sat down, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to formulate her words. "Freddie, we won the lottery. The numbers he chose." Hendricks arched an eyebrow, a mix of surprise and calculation passing through his eyes. Wow, that's huge, Caroline. What are you going to do?" She bit her lip, the conflict clear in her gaze. "I don't know. I need to think. But Freddie wants to celebrate tonight. He's planning everything." Hendricks reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Whatever you decide, I'm here. Remember, you're not in this alone." Caroline nodded, grateful for the support, but her mind had already begun to weave the outlines of a plan that until then seemed like a distant ghost in her imagination. The promise of financial freedom cast a new light on her choices, each possibility laden with its own promises and dangers. She spent the remainder of the meeting distant, her responses automatic while her mind wandered through the labyrinth of her options. Saying goodbye to Hendricks, she promised they would talk later, each step toward home firming up a plan that could forever change her life. After parting from Hendricks, Caroline walked back home, her mind buzzing with thoughts that alternated between excitement and guilt. The streets seemed to spin around her, each step echoing the beats of her confused and racing heart. Upon entering the house, she found Freddie already dressed up and ready to celebrate, his joy nearly tangible. "Freddie," she began hesitantly as he adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, "can we talk for a moment before we go out?" "Of course, my love." Freddie smiled, turning towards her. "Is everything all right? You seem worried." Caroline took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "Yes, it's all fine. It's just that I was thinking about the prize. It's a lot, Freddie. What if something goes wrong?" Freddie stepped closer, placing his hands on her shoulders. "Carol, we'll be fine. We'll be cautious, of course, but tonight is a night for celebration, not worries." She forced a smile, her decision still wavering. "You're right. Let's celebrate then." During dinner, as Freddie talked about future plans and dreams that now seemed possible, Caroline felt increasingly distant. His words were sweet, but inside her, a storm was brewing, fueled by whispers of an alternative future suggested by Hendricks. Later that night, after Freddie had fallen asleep, Caroline picked up her phone and dialed Hendricks's number, her heart pounding against her chest. "Hendricks, I need to talk to you," she whispered as soon as he answered. "I'm here, Caroline. What happened? What if we kept it all? The entire prize?" Her voice was a tense thread of anxiety and desire. There was a pause on the other line. "Are you serious? Caroline, that's risky." "I know, but think about what we could do with all that money. Just the two of us," she argued, her tone laden with persuasion. Hendricks sighed, weighing her words. "All right, let's say we go ahead with this. We need to be smart. The first step would be to lose the ticket. Without it, Freddie can't claim the prize." Caroline felt a chill run down her spine. "And the divorce. That too. The quicker you separate, the less complicated it will be later. You need to be free when we claim the money," Hendricks explained, his voice low and conspiratorial. "What if he finds out?" Caroline's insecurity was palpable, even over the phone. "We'll make sure he doesn't. Trust me, Caroline. After everything, we'll be together and free, with enough resources to start a new life." She took a deep breath, the idea of the plan solidifying in her mind. "All right, let's do it." Hanging up the phone, Caroline felt a mix of excitement and fear. She lay down next to Freddie, watching him sleep. The innocence of his sleeping face weighed on her heart, but the temptation of a new beginning with Hendrix was too powerful to resist. The next day, she would pretend to lose the ticket, triggering a series of events that would forever alter the course of their lives. As she planned each step, the weight of her choices began to manifest, each decision a stone in the construction of her uncertain and clandestine future. The morning after the celebration felt eerily quiet, as if the world around was holding its breath. Freddie was in the kitchen making coffee, still occasionally smiling at the memory of the lottery news. Caroline watched him from the kitchen doorway, her heart racing as she prepared to set her plan in motion. "Freddie," began Caroline, her voice tremulous, trying to mask the tension she felt. I need to tell you something." Freddie turned around, his smile still on his face. "Sure, what's up? Is there a problem?" She swallowed hard, gathering courage. I think I lost something very important. The lottery ticket." Freddie's smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of confusion and concern. "What do you mean, lost? Where did you last see it?" Caroline felt a pang of guilt seeing his expression change, but she continued, "I thought I had put it in my bag after buying it, but I looked through everything this morning and I couldn't find it." Freddie ran his hands through his hair, clearly trying to process the information. "Are you sure? It must be somewhere, Carol. Let's look together. It might be in a different pocket, or maybe it fell somewhere." Together, they turned the house upside down, lifting cushions, rummaging through drawers, and emptying bags. With each passing minute without finding the ticket, Freddie seemed increasingly despondent, while Caroline feigned despair and frustration. After an exhaustive and fruitless search, Freddie sat down on the sofa, his head in his hands. Caroline sat next to him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Freddie, I'm so sorry," she said, her voice gentle. "I should have been more careful." Freddie lifted his head, his eyes showing a mix of sadness and resignation. No, I shouldn't have put this pressure on you. It's just money, Carol. What's important is that we're together. We'll get through this." Caroline felt torn hearing his words, the pain in her heart intensified by the understanding and love Freddie showed. "You're incredible, Freddie. I don't know what I'd do without you." He forced a sad smile and hugged her. "We'll be okay, somehow. Maybe it wasn't meant to be." Caroline nodded, maintaining the charade, while a whirlwind of conflicting emotions swirled inside her. The plan was in motion, and there was no turning back. Internally, she wondered if she could really go through with it all without being consumed by remorse. Freddie, still holding her, sighed deeply, trying to accept the situation. Caroline knew the next phase of the plan needed to start soon, but in that moment, all she wanted was to believe that there might be another way. As the day wore on, the farce solidified, and the reality of her actions began to settle in. The next step would be even more challenging, and Caroline felt the weight of each decision. As she prepared for the next stage, the tension between what she desired and what she was doing seemed unbearable. The days following the disappearance of the lottery ticket were charged with palpable tension. Caroline felt each moment weigh heavier than the last, a mix of guilt and determination coursing through her veins as she planned her next step. One gray afternoon, as the rain gently tapped against the living room windows, Caroline sat beside Freddie on the couch, her trembling hands hidden in her lap. Freddie, still devastated by the loss of the ticket, seemed distant, lost in thought. "Freddie," Caroline began, her voice low, forcing each word out. "I need to talk about something important." Freddie turned to her, the sadness in his eyes giving way to momentary concern. "What's going on, Carol?" She took a deep breath, the weight of her words almost suffocating her. I think we should separate." Freddie recoiled as if physically struck. Separate? Why? I don't understand. We've always overcome everything together. I know, but I feel like we're heading in different directions. I need space, Freddie. I need time to think about what I really want from life, Caroline said, each word carefully chosen to hide the true reasons behind her decision. Freddie looked confused, his hands trembling slightly as he tried to process the information. Is this because of the ticket? Because we lost the prize? Carol, this shouldn't drive us apart, it should bring us closer. It's not just the ticket, Caroline lied, avoiding his gaze. It's everything. We've grown apart, Freddie. I just think it would be better for both of us. Freddie lowered his head, an expression of hurt crystallizing on his face. If that's what you want, I won't force you to stay with me if you're not happy. Caroline felt a sharp pang of remorse at the pain she was causing him, but she remained firm. I think it's for the best. Please try to understand. Freddie nodded slowly, defeated. I'll try. I've always wanted the best for you, Carol, even if it means letting you go. Caroline quickly stood up, avoiding the temptation to console him. I need some time. I'm going to stay with a friend for a few days. Without waiting for a response, she went to the bedroom, packed some clothes into a suitcase, and with one last look at Freddie, who was still sitting, immersed in his sadness, she walked out the front door. Driving through the rain, Caroline felt each drop hit the windshield like a reminder of her choices. Arriving at Hendrix's apartment, she was visibly shaken, the adrenaline of what she had just done still pulsing through her veins. Hendrix greeted her with a tight hug. You did it, then. Are you okay? Yes, I did, she confirmed, her pale face contrasting with the darkness outside. Now we need to plan our next step. With Freddie out of the way, we can finally be free. Hendrix nodded, but there was a shadow of doubt in his eyes. Yes, free, he echoed, though he seemed less certain than she did. Together, they began to plot the details of how they would claim the prize, each plan a step further from her previous life and a step closer to a new reality filled with uncertainties and possibilities. As they discussed, night fell over the city, the sound of rain a constant reminder of the decisions they had made. Hendrix's apartment was illuminated only by a dim lamp that cast long shadows on the walls. Caroline and Hendrix sat facing each other, the tension between them palpable as they fervently discussed their next steps. There's something we need to consider if we're really going to move forward with this, Hendrix said, his serious voice cutting through the dense silence. Caroline, still unsettled by her decision to leave Freddie, leaned forward, eager. What is it? My cousin, he's a lawyer. I was thinking, maybe he can help us adjust things legally. We can put the prize in a third party's name, someone we trust, to avoid any suspicion falling on you or me. Caroline hesitated, her heart racing. The idea of involving someone else in their secret plan made her nervous, but the promise of a future with Hendrix made her consider all options. Isn't that too risky? Hendrix took her hands, his eyes fixed on hers with comforting intensity. Caroline, trust me. My cousin is extremely discreet and professional. He's handled delicate situations before. This could protect us from any legal complications in the future. Caroline sighed, the weight of the situation forcing her to confront realities she never thought she'd face. What if Freddie finds out? He won't. We'll do everything in a way that he won't even suspect. Plus, with the divorce in process, you'll have a plausible explanation for any changes in your financial situation. Comforted by Hendrix's words but still nervous, Caroline finally agreed. All right, talk to your cousin. See what he can do for us. Hendrix smiled, a glimmer of relief passing through his eyes. He picked up his phone and quickly typed out a message. I'll set up a meeting with him tomorrow. We can go together if you want, so you can ask any questions you have." I think I'd like that," Caroline said, feeling a bit more secure knowing she would have the opportunity to fully understand the plan. The meeting was set, and the next day, Caroline and Hendrix met Hendrix's cousin, Marco, in a small, discreet cafe in the city. Marco was a middle-aged man with a serious demeanor and observant eyes. He listened attentively as Hendrix explained the situation, occasionally nodding or making notes in his notepad. "I understand the delicacy of the case," Marco said, his calm voice conveying a confidence that eased Caroline a bit. "I can create a structure that allows the claim of the prize in a way that protects both of you. But you need to understand that this must be done with the utmost care and discretion." Caroline nodded, grateful for Marco's professionalism. "We understand. We're ready to do whatever is necessary." With the plan starting to take shape, Caroline felt a mix of fear and excitement. The possibilities of what they could do with the money seemed endless, but the shadow of their actions also cast a long, dark veil over their future. As they left the cafe, Caroline looked at Hendrix, finding comfort in his presence. They had taken another step together towards a new beginning, but the road ahead was still uncertain and filled with risks. The lawyer's office was filled with a heavy silence, interrupted only by the soft sound of the pen as Freddie signed the divorce papers. The walls, adorned with diplomas and accolades, seemed to watch the scene with imposing gravity. Freddie, his hands visibly trembling, looked like a shadow of himself, his eyes occasionally welling with unshed tears. Each signature felt like a silent goodbye to the years of marriage he believed were built on love and trust. Caroline, on the other hand, maintained a firm posture, her expression calculatedly neutral, though her eyes occasionally betrayed a flicker of what looked suspiciously like relief, perhaps even happiness. She signed her name with a determination that starkly contrasted with Freddie's hesitation. "That's everything then," said the lawyer, closing the dossier with a final snap. "With these signatures, the divorce process will be formalized. You'll receive all the final documents by mail in a few weeks." Freddie simply nodded, unable to speak, his throat tight with the weight of emotions. He looked at Caroline, searching for any sign of regret or sadness, but found only a woman seemingly ready to move on. "Caroline," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion, "are you sure this is what you want?" Caroline met his gaze, her expression softening slightly. "Freddie, it's best for both of us. We need space to grow, separately." Freddie shook his head slowly, resigned. "I've always wanted the best for you, Carol. Always. Even now." Caroline lightly touched Freddie's arm, a gesture meant to be consoling, but it felt more like a goodbye. "I know, Freddie, and I'll always be grateful for everything." As she left the lawyer's office, Caroline felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The formalization of the divorce was the last tie to a life she was desperate to leave behind. However, she knew things were about to get even more complicated. Hendrix was waiting for her outside, leaning against his car with a thoughtful expression. Upon seeing her, he straightened up, opening his arms to welcome her. "It's done?" he asked, his voice low. Caroline nodded, allowing herself to be enveloped in a hug. "It's done. We're free now, Hendrix." "Great," Hendrix said, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. "Now we can start planning our future together. No secrets, no lies." Caroline stepped back, looking at him with renewed intensity. "Yes, no secrets. Let's do this right." As Caroline and Hendrix discussed their future plans, the expression on Freddie's face, watching from a distance before walking away, spoke volumes about the pain and betrayal he felt. His growing suspicion about Caroline's behavior began to plant seeds of doubt, leading him to question everything he thought he knew about the woman he had shared his life with. This unspoken suspicion was the prelude to a quest for truth that would soon take shape. In the days following the signing of the divorce papers, Freddie found himself in a deep state of melancholy. The house that once echoed with laughter and conversations now only resonated with the sound of his own footsteps. The suspicion he had suppressed began to bubble up, fueled by the abrupt way Caroline had changed. It was during a casual meeting at the local bar that Herbert, a longtime friend and confidant, noticed Freddie's despondent state. Sitting down next to him, Herbert looked at his friend with concern. "Freddie, you don't look well, man. Are you sure everything's all right?" Freddie sighed, his tired eyes meeting Herbert's. "It's Caroline. I just can't understand what happened. Everything changed so fast." Herbert, whose expression was already serious, grew even more somber. "Freddie, have you thought that maybe there's someone else in her life? Have you seen anything, any sign that makes you think she might be seeing someone?" The question made Freddie freeze. He had considered the possibility, but hearing it out loud from someone he trusted made it all more real. I don't know. Maybe. But how could I be sure?" "Why don't you hire a detective? They can find out if something else is going on," Herbert suggested, placing a hand on Freddie's shoulder. The idea resonated with Freddie with surprising clarity. It was a way to get answers, to understand if his suspicion was justified. "Maybe you're right. I need to know." In the following days, Freddie sought out a private detective, a man with a reputation for discretion and efficiency. In a discreet meeting at a quiet cafe, Freddie explained the situation, handing over photos of Caroline and details of her routine. The detective, a man named Lucas, listened attentively and nodded. "I'll start following some leads and observing her. I'll keep you informed of everything I discover." The investigation was swift. Lucas was methodical and thorough in his work. Within days, he brought devastating news. Freddie was sitting in the same cafe, nervously stirring his cold coffee, when Lucas approached with a thick envelope. "Freddie, I found something," Lucas began, his voice low. He handed over the envelope. Inside, there were photos of Caroline with another man, Hendricks, in various clearly romantic encounters. Freddie felt as if the ground had been ripped out from under his feet. Each image was a blow, each smile from Caroline to this man a dagger to his heart. Who is he? His name is Hendricks. Apparently, they've been together for some time, Lucas explained, watching Freddie with a sympathetic expression. Lucas's words were a distant murmur as Freddie flipped through the photos, each one adding weight to his despair. I can't believe she would do this, he murmured, more to himself than to the detective. "I'm sorry, Fredby. If there's anything more I can do to help," Lucas offered, but Freddie just shook his head. "Thank you, Lucas. This is all I needed to know." Freddie paid for the service, his hands trembling as he placed the money on the table. Freddie left the cafe, the photos burning a hole in his pocket. He walked aimlessly, the images of Caroline's infidelity haunting his every thought. With the truth now revealed, he knew the next step would be to confront Caroline, but how he would do it, and what he would say, were still mysteries he needed to unravel. It was a cold, somber morning when Caroline appeared at Freddie's door, her face pale and eyes red from crying. She knocked frantically, each knock resounding like thunder in the stillness of dawn. Freddie, still reeling from the devastation of discovering the betrayal, hesitated before opening the door. When he finally did, he found Caroline collapsing in the doorway. "Freddie, I don't know who else to turn to," she sobbed, the words punctuated by tears. She looked utterly desperate, her hair disheveled and clothes wrinkled as if she had spent the night in turmoil. "Caroline, what happened?" Freddie's voice was cautious, his posture rigid as he watched her with a mix of concern and resentment. "It's Hendricks. He ran away," she cried, her trembling hands covering her face. "He took all the money, Freddie. All the lottery money we won." The revelation hit Freddie like a punch to the gut. Even while still feeling the pain of her betrayal, he couldn't help but feel a pang of compassion seeing Caroline so broken. "Come in," he finally said, opening the door wider. Caroline stumbled in, clearly shaken and unstable. She sat on the couch, wrapping her arms around herself, trembling. Freddie sat across from her, maintaining a careful distance. How did this happen? How did he get access to the money? Caroline took a deep breath, trying to calm herself enough to explain. We put the money in a joint account. He said it was for our future together. I trusted him, Freddie. I was blind. Caroline, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for my help when you decided to claim the prize? Freddie asked, his voice low, struggling to control the mix of emotions he felt. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought he loved me, she said, her voice breaking as the tears began to flow freely again. But I was wrong. He planned everything from the start, to use me and take the money. Freddie ran a hand through his hair, deeply frustrated and confused about how to feel. What are you going to do now, Caroline? I don't know, Freddie. I really don't know. I'm lost, she admitted, looking more vulnerable than he remembered. Freddie looked at her, his heart still wounded, but his caring nature taking the forefront. We'll find a solution. We can't let him get away with this. Caroline looked at him, a glimmer of hope in her tired eyes. You would help me after everything I've done? Freddie sighed, the internal conflict clear on his face. Despite everything, I still care, Caroline. I can't stand to see you destroyed like this. Caroline leaned forward, grateful for any support. Thank you, Freddie. I don't deserve your kindness. They sat in silence for a moment, pondering the weight of the revelations and the path forward. Freddie knew the next step would be crucial. They needed to act, and quickly, if they were to have any chance of recovering what was lost and bringing Hendricks to justice. The gears of vengeance and redemption began to turn, marking the start of an uncertain and turbulent journey for them both. Freddie and Caroline sat face to face, the table between them heavy with the weight of their past and future confessions. The dim morning light slowly faded into the room, casting long shadows that echoed the somber mood. I need to know everything, Caroline. Every detail, Freddie said, his voice firm, but his eyes betrayed the pain he felt. Caroline swallowed hard, her eyes downcast, fearing the judgment in every word she was about to say. It all started months ago, she began hesitantly. Hendricks. He approached me at a time when I felt very lonely. You were always working, and I let myself be carried away. Freddie listened, each word cutting like a blade. He wanted to interrupt her, wanted to scream, but he knew he needed to listen, needed to understand. She delved deeper, explaining how Hendricks had planned each step, from seducing her to convincing her to manipulate the lottery ticket. He knew about our financial situation, Freddie. He used that against me, promising a life that we both knew we could never have together. How could you? Freddie's question was less an accusation and more a lament, his voice broken by the betrayal. I was lost, Freddie. I thought I was making the right choice for us, for me. I was so wrong, Caroline admitted, tears beginning to form in her eyes as she passed her trembling hands over her face. Caroline then pulled a thick envelope from her bag, extending it to Freddie. Here are all the messages, emails, everything that proves what I'm saying, including photos of us together and records of our meetings. Freddie took the envelope with trembling hands, the weight of the paper feeling infinitely heavier than it actually was. He didn't want to see, didn't want to know, but he knew it was necessary. He opened it slowly. Each document, each photo, each piece of evidence was a stab, but also a step towards the truth and eventually, closure. Why are you giving me this now? Freddie asked, his voice laden with a mix of anger and despair. Because I want to fix things, Freddie. I want to help catch Hendricks, make him pay for what he did to us. It's all I can do now, she replied, the desperation in her voice matching her determination. Freddie looked at her, trying to find traces of the woman he had loved. And what do you expect to happen now? Caroline lowered her head, uncertain. I don't know. Maybe nothing can truly fix what I've done. But I need to try, Freddie. For us, for everything we had. They sat in silence, each lost in their thoughts, the sound of the envelope's pages occasionally breaking the silence. Caroline's betrayal was deep, but her willingness to correct her mistakes offered a glimmer of redemption. Finally, Freddie spoke. We'll take this to the police. We'll make him pay. Caroline nodded, a small relief blooming in her chest despite the chaos. Yes, let's do that. With the decision made, they knew the road ahead would be difficult. But now, united by a common purpose, perhaps they could begin to heal the wounds opened by betrayal and greed. The gears of justice began to turn, and the next chapter of their lives promised to be as tumultuous as it was revealing. After a morning filled with revelations and difficult decisions, Freddie and Caroline drove to the local police station, a burden of incriminating documents in hand. The atmosphere in the car was heavy, marked by tense silence, interrupted only by Caroline's occasional sighs and the mechanical sound of the windshield wipers repelling the light rain. Upon arrival, they were greeted by a senior detective, Detective Maurice, who led them to a stark interrogation room where the reality of their actions would begin to take legal form. Can you tell me everything you know? Detective Maurice asked, opening the envelope full of evidence that Freddie placed on the table with a firm gesture. Freddie started, his voice steady despite the emotional whirlwind. It all began with an affair and evolved into a fraudulent scheme to divert a lottery prize. Here are the messages, photos, and financial records that prove Hendricks's involvement. Caroline intervened, her voice trembling. I was involved. I was manipulated by Hendricks. He planned everything from the start. I'm here because I want to do the right thing now. The detective meticulously examined the documents, occasionally casting scrutinizing glances in Caroline's direction. I understand. We'll need all the testimony you can provide. This will greatly help the case against Hendricks. Based on the evidence provided, the police acted swiftly. Hendricks was located in a nearby town, thanks to the bank information Caroline provided, which allowed them to track his recent movements. We've been able to freeze the bank accounts where the lottery prize was deposited, Detective Maurice informed Freddie and Caroline over the phone, a few hours after the operation began. Hendricks is in custody, and we'll start interrogations immediately. Freddie felt a mix of relief and vindication upon hearing the news. Caroline, beside him, seemed relieved but still deeply shaken by how quickly her world had collapsed and was now being reconstructed. What happens now? Freddie asked, his voice laden with cautious hope. The case will go to trial. With the evidence you've provided and Caroline's testimony, we have a strong case, Detective Maurice explained. We'll do everything we can to ensure that justice is served. Freddie nodded, feeling a bit lighter for the first time in weeks. Thank you, Detective, for everything. As they prepared for the legal battles ahead, Freddie and Caroline knew the road would still be long and filled with challenges. However, with justice finally in motion, a sense of closure began to form, even though they would still have to face the consequences of their actions and those of Hendricks in court. The day of the trial dawned gray and somber, as if the very sky reflected the gravity of the events about to unfold. The courtroom was packed, the tension palpable as Freddie, Caroline, and Hendricks, accompanied by their respective lawyers, took their seats. The judge entered, and everyone stood. He was a man of severe demeanor, with an expression that brooked no disorder. Once everyone was seated, he began the session. We are here to resolve a case of fraud and conspiracy involving the lottery prize, the judge declared, adjusting his glasses as he looked at the documents before him. The charges are serious and require our meticulous scrutiny." The prosecutor was the first to speak, outlining the case against Hendricks and Caroline. The defendants conspired to divert a significant lottery prize, deceiving not only financial institutions but also harming Mr. Freddy, who was the true victim of this nefarious scheme. Caroline, dressed soberly, her face pale with anxiety, was called to testify. She recounted her version of events, her voice shaky at first but gaining strength as she continued. "I acknowledge my mistakes and accept my share of the blame. I was manipulated by Hendricks, but that does not absolve me of my responsibility in what happened." Hendricks, for his part, tried to defend himself, arguing that Caroline was equally involved in the plan from the beginning. "She knew everything. We planned it together," he said, trying to shift some of the blame onto Caroline. The lawyers presented their closing arguments, and after a brief recess, the judge returned with a decision. Everyone in the courtroom leaned forward, anticipating his words. "After carefully considering all the evidence and testimonies presented, I have reached a decision," the judge began, his stern eyes sweeping the room. "It is clear that there was a conspiracy to defraud the lottery prize. Hendricks, your actions were calculated and harmful, and Caroline, despite your cooperation with justice, you actively participated in the fraud." The judge paused before continuing. "Therefore, I sentence Hendricks to a significant prison term for fraud and conspiracy. Caroline, due to your cooperation and demonstrated remorse, your sentence will be lighter but will still reflect the seriousness of your actions." Finally, he turned to the issue of the lottery prize. As for the lottery prize, it was clearly won without any deceit or fraud on the part of Mr. Freddy. Therefore, I rule that the prize belongs exclusively to him. Freddy, who had remained calm and composed throughout the trial, felt a mixture of relief and vindication upon hearing the decision. Caroline bowed her head, accepting the verdict with resignation, while Hendricks was led away by the officers of justice. As the courtroom emptied, the weight of justice seemed to have brought necessary closure for Freddy. However, the wounds from what had happened still needed time to heal. The consequences of the trial and the next steps would be faced, but for now, Freddy could at least contemplate a future where justice had prevailed. As the judge's final words echoed in the courtroom, Freddy felt a mixture of relief and sobriety. Walking home alone, he reflected on the tumultuous journey he had faced. The cool afternoon breeze caressed his face, inviting him to breathe in new beginnings. At home, Freddy was met with the silence of a space that had been saturated with painful memories. He began by reorganizing the house, a symbolic act of putting his life in order. Every object moved, every drawer organized, seemed to help him rebuild his inner self, piece by piece. A few days later, Freddy met with his longtime friend Herbert at a local cafe. The cozy environment and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee set the perfect stage for meaningful conversations. "Freddy, how are you feeling?" Herbert asked, his expression a mix of concern and relief at seeing his friend in a visibly calmer state. "You know, Herbert, it's strange. I feel like a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders, but at the same time, there's an emptiness," Freddy confessed, stirring his coffee absently with a spoon. "It's natural to feel that way," Herbert nodded, offering a supportive smile. "But look, Freddy, this is your chance to rebuild your life, to find happiness in new things, new people." Freddy smiled slightly, recognizing the truth in his friend's words. "I'm thinking about starting some projects I've always wanted to do. Maybe travel more, see new places, meet new people." "That sounds fantastic. And what about relationships?" Herbert inquired, a hopeful glint in his eyes. "In time," Freddy replied thoughtfully. "I want to make sure that any future relationship I enter is with an open mind and heart. I want them to be based on mutual respect, something I've learned is more valuable than I ever imagined." Herbert nodded in approval. "That's the right way to go, Freddy. And who knows, maybe in some of those new places you explore, You'll find someone special." Laughing, Freddie agreed. "Maybe so, Herbert. Maybe so." In the months that followed, Freddie invested in himself. He enrolled in cooking classes, joined a local book club, and began planning a trip to Europe. He also looked for volunteer opportunities, wanting to give back to the community that supported him during his hardest times. Freddie wasn't just rebuilding his life. He was rediscovering himself, finding joy in small things and learning to trust again. Life had come full circle, and Freddie was ready to face whatever came next with a new perspective and a stronger heart. As he prepared for his first solo trip abroad, Freddie knew that despite the trials of the past, the future still held much to offer. Life lay open before him, a book with unwritten pages, waiting to be explored. The prison gates opened with a metallic creak that resonated deeply in Caroline's chest. She took a hesitant step outside, her eyes squinting against the morning sunlight she hadn't felt in years. Freedom had a bittersweet taste, laden with the weight of her past choices and the memories of a life that had crumbled under the weight of her own decisions. Carrying a small suitcase containing all her possessions, Caroline walked slowly down the street, observing people going about their daily lives. Laughing couples, children playing, people hurrying to work, all these scenes of normalcy seemed strangely distant to her now. She found a bench in a nearby park and sat down, her mind swirling with thoughts and reflections. "What have I done with my life?" she murmured to herself, a tear rolling down her face. At that moment, an elderly woman sat beside her, noticing Caroline's melancholy expression. "Tough days?" the woman asked with a soft voice, full of gentle understanding. Caroline looked at her, surprised to be approached, but something in the woman's kindness encouraged her to speak. "Yes, you could say that. I just left a place I hope never to see again," she responded, hesitant to reveal too much. "Life out here can be intimidating after time behind bars," the woman said, as if reading her thoughts. "But each day is a new page, my dear. You have the chance to write a different story now." Caroline felt the woman's words penetrate deeply. "I want to believe that. I want to do things right this time." "Then you will," the woman smiled, standing up to leave. "Step by step, day by day. Remember, it's not about how fast you move, but the direction you choose." Grateful for the conversation, Caroline remained seated, contemplating her next actions. She knew the path to redemption wouldn't be easy or quick. It would involve making amends, rebuilding burnt bridges, and perhaps most challengingly, forgiving herself. She decided to start where she knew she could make a difference. Caroline began volunteering, helping those who, like her, struggled to reintegrate into society. Each person she helped, each small success she witnessed, slowly began to rebuild her own faith in a better future. As Caroline worked to change her life and the lives of others, she didn't notice how quickly time passed, each day a small victory over her past. And with each day, she moved a little closer to understanding the true meaning of redemption. But as Caroline looked toward the future, a figure from her past watched from afar, pondering whether to reintroduce themselves into her life, now that she seemed to be finally finding her way. This figure, carrying secrets and revelations, could be the key to fully understanding the consequences of her past actions and perhaps offer a chance for true redemption. Caroline sat by the bus window, lost in thought as she watched the city go by. The soft murmur of the other passengers mixed with the rumble of the engine, creating an almost soothing backdrop for her tumultuous thoughts. As the bus turned a corner, her eyes casually drifted to the sidewalk, where an unexpectedly familiar scene captured her attention. There was Freddie, visibly older, but radiating a serene happiness she had rarely seen during their time together. He was with a woman and two small children, laughing as they shared ice cream. Caroline watched as he gently wiped the melted ice cream from one of the children's faces, a simple gesture but filled with love and care. A pang gripped Caroline's heart as she witnessed the scene. The weight of her past choices had never felt so palpable. She saw, perhaps for the first time, what her actions had cost not only herself but also Freddie. He had moved on, rebuilt his life without her, found happiness that she once thought they could have had together. Turning to face the window, Caroline let a solitary tear slide down her face. The reflection in the glass showed a changed woman, someone who had learned through pain and regret the true extent of the impact of her actions. Yet amid the pain, there was a glimmer of hope. She was learning to live with her choices, and with each passing day, she strove to be a better person. "Are you all right?" The soft voice came from the elderly lady sitting beside her, a kind-eyed woman who had noticed the subtle change in Caroline's expression. Caroline wiped the tear away, offering a shaky smile. "Yes, I am. Just thinking about life," she replied, her voice low. "Life has a funny way of showing us what really matters, doesn't it?" the elderly woman remarked, looking thoughtfully ahead. "Yes, it really does," Caroline agreed, feeling an unexpected connection with this stranger who seemed to understand more than she could have imagined. As the bus continued its journey, leaving behind the image of Freddie and his new family, Caroline felt strengthened by the prospect of continuing her redemption journey. She knew the path would be long and sometimes lonely, but she was determined to make every step count. And so, with the bus moving forward, Caroline faced the future not with fear but with renewed resolve. She couldn't change the past, but she could influence the future. And in that journey, she would look for moments of joy and redemption, for small victories in a sea of challenges. Maybe one day, she too could find a new happiness, as radiant as the one Freddie had found.
So, if you're not subscribed yet, click on the subscribe button below and join our community. Thank you for your support and see you in the next videos.